The galaxy was peaceful. For 10,000 years, no wars had been fought. No one went hungry. No one died from disease or violence. The Galactic Confederation had created the perfect society. 847 different species worked together under one government. They shared technology, resources, and knowledge. Their advanced computers solved every problem before it became serious. Crime was almost zero. Poverty did not exist. Even natural disasters were predicted and stopped before they could hurt anyone. The leaders of the Confederation were proud of what they had built. They often talked about how much better life was now compared to the old days. Back then, species fought each other for resources. Wars destroyed entire planets. Billions died for nothing, but those dark times were long gone. The galaxy had learned to live in peace. Sometimes, old records mentioned a species called humans. These records were ancient and hard to read. Most people thought humans were just stories. Legend said they had vanished exactly 10,000 years ago, right when the peaceful age began. Some believed they had destroyed themselves in wars. Others thought they had just left the galaxy. The truth was much different. Far from the busy trade routes and populated worlds, a small yellow star burned quietly in space. Around it spun a blue planet that the ancient records called Terra, or Earth. The Confederation's charts marked it as dead. Long-range scans showed no cities, no technology, no signs of life. If anyone had looked closer, they would have been surprised. Deep under the planet's surface, vast tunnels stretched for thousands of miles. These underground cities were bigger than anything the Confederation had ever built. The walls were made of materials that could last forever. The air was clean and fresh. Soft lights provided warmth without hurting the eyes. And everywhere, as far as the eye could see, were sleeping pods. Millions of them filled enormous chambers. Each pod was made of clear crystal and metal. Inside each one, a human slept in perfect suspension. They had not aged a single day in 10,000 years. Their bodies were preserved exactly as they had been when they went to sleep. Men, women, and children of every age rested in the pods. Soldiers with scars from old battles. Scientists with gentle faces. Farmers with strong hands. Teachers, doctors, engineers, artists. An entire civilization lay dreaming in the dark. Above them, machines worked without stopping. These computers were far more advanced than anything the Confederation used. They watched over the sleeping humans like protective parents. They maintained the pods, cleaned the air, and kept everything working perfectly. But the machines did more than just maintain the underground cities. Hidden sensors reached out across the galaxy. They watched for specific signals. They measured energy patterns that most species did not even know existed. They looked for signs of something terrible. For 10,000 years, the sensors had found nothing. The galaxy remained quiet and safe. The humans slept on. Then everything changed. Deep in space, at the very edge of the galaxy, reality began to twist. Stars that had burned for billions of years suddenly went dark. Entire solar systems vanished without trace. The distortions moved slowly but steadily toward the center of the galaxy. The Confederation noticed these events, but did not understand them. Their scientists created theories about natural phenomena. Perhaps old stars were collapsing. Maybe it was some kind of space storm. They sent research ships to investigate. The ships never returned. On Earth, the ancient sensors detected what the Confederation could not. Energy signatures that matched patterns stored in memory for 50,000 years. Quantum distortions that meant only one thing. The enemy had returned. Alarms that had been silent for 10 millennia began to sound in the deep places of Earth. Emergency protocols activated. Computer systems that had waited patiently for this moment sprang into action. In the largest chamber, one pod began to glow brighter than the others. Liquid drained away. The crystal lid opened with a soft hiss. Inside, a woman with short gray hair opened her eyes. Admiral Sarah Chen had been 35 years old when she went to sleep. She was still 35 as she sat up and took her first breath in 10,000 years. The suspension process had worked perfectly. She stepped out of the pod and walked to a control panel. Her movements were steady despite the long sleep. Her training had prepared her for this moment. She pressed her hand to the panel and spoke clearly. Admiral Chen, Authorization 77 Alpha. Begin awakening sequence for command staff. Around her, other pods began to glow. One by one, humans started to wake up. Generals, captains, engineers, and specialists. Each one had been chosen for this day. Each one knew exactly what their job would be. As more people woke up, the underground cities came alive. Lights brightened. Machines hummed with increased activity. In enormous chambers, hidden even deeper underground, assembly lines began building ships and weapons. These factories had been prepared for 10,000 years. Now they would work non-stop until the job was done. Admiral Chen walked to a window that showed the surface of Earth. To anyone watching from space, the planet still looked dead. But she could see the truth. Weapon platforms rose from hidden bunkers. Spaceships emerged from underground hangars. The planet that the galaxy had forgotten was waking up. She turned to her staff officers, who were now dressed in black uniforms marked with the symbol of Earth. Their faces were serious, but not afraid. They had always known this day would come. How long do we have? Chen asked. The distortions are moving at approximately 1 light year per month, reported Commander Jackson, her science officer. At current speed, they will reach Confederation space in 3 years. Central systems in 5 years. And the Confederation response? They do not recognize the threat. Their ships are investigating but finding nothing. They have no weapons, no military, no understanding of what is coming. Admiral Chen nodded. This was exactly what they had expected. The peaceful galaxy had forgotten how to fight. It had forgotten that some threats could not be reasoned with or negotiated away. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Wake the first wave. Military command structure only. We will reveal ourselves to the Confederation slowly. Ma'am, they will not understand, said Commander Jackson. 10,000 years of peace have made them soft. Admiral Chen looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an ancient evil was returning. The same force that had destroyed the previous galactic civilization 50,000 years ago. The enemy that had made humanity choose between comfort and duty. They had chosen duty. Now it was time to remember why. They will understand, she said quietly. When the darkness comes, they always understand. The first human ships appeared in Confederation. Space without warning. Traffic controllers at the busy trade station of Nexus Prime watched their screens in confusion. Where there had been empty space moments before, now showed 3 large vessels. The ships were black as the space between stars. Their design was unlike anything in the Confederation database. Unknown vessels. Please identify yourselves and state your business, transmitted Controller Vex. A tall blue alien with 4 eyes. The response came immediately. The voice was clear but cold. This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We require immediate conference with your highest military authority. Controller Vex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. I'm sorry, but we don't have a military. The Confederation maintains peace through diplomatic and economic means. Perhaps you would like to speak with our Trade Council? Negative. We need to speak with whoever commands your defenses. Sir, we don't have any defenses. We haven't needed them for 10,000 years. Perhaps you could explain what this is about? There was a long pause from the human ship. When Captain Morrison spoke again, His voice carried a note of disbelief. You have no military at all? No, sir. Is there a problem? Another pause. Then, we will dock at your station. Prepare a meeting room. The human ships moved toward the docking bays with smooth precision. Other ship captains in the area watched nervously. These new vessels moved like predators. Their hulls showed no windows, no decorations, no signs of peaceful intent. 3 hours later, Captain Morrison sat across from Chancellor Vex High in the station's main conference room. The Chancellor was an elderly Altarian with purple skin and kind eyes. He had spent his life solving disputes through careful negotiation. Morrison was human, which surprised everyone present. Humans were supposed to be extinct. He wore a black uniform with silver markings. His face showed no emotion as he spoke. Chancellor, your space is about to be invaded by a hostile force. We estimate you have less than 3 years to prepare. You need to begin immediate military buildup. Chancellor Vex High leaned back in his chair. Captain Morrison, I think there has been some misunderstanding. The Confederation has existed in peace for 10 millennia. We have no enemies. Our conflict resolution systems can handle any dispute. These enemies do not negotiate. They consume. They will destroy every living thing in this galaxy unless they are stopped by force. Surely you're exaggerating. In our experience, all conflicts can be resolved through proper communication and compromise. Captain Morrison stood up abruptly. Your experience means nothing. You have lived in peace because others kept the darkness away. Now the darkness returns, and you are completely unprepared. The Chancellor tried to remain calm. Captain, even if what you say is true, the Confederation cannot simply build weapons. Our member species have sworn oaths of non-violence. Our entire society is built around peaceful cooperation. Then your society will die. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Chancellor Vex High had negotiated with thousands of species over his long career. He had never met anyone who spoke with such cold certainty. What do you propose? He asked finally. Grant us temporary military authority. Allow us to use your industrial capacity to build defenses. Begin evacuating non-essential populations from border systems. That's impossible. We cannot simply hand over authority to strangers. Even if humans are real, even if your story is true, the Confederation cannot accept military rule. Captain Morrison's jaw tightened. Then we will do what we must without your permission. The meeting ended badly. Captain Morrison and his team left the station immediately. Chancellor Vex High called an emergency session of the Confederation Council. Within hours, representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss this strange development. The debate continued for days. Some wanted to welcome the humans as returning brothers. Others feared they were invaders using scare tactics. Most simply could not believe that war was possible in their peaceful age. While they debated, human ships began appearing throughout Confederation space. They seized abandoned mining stations and empty plants. Enormous factories rose from nothing in a matter of days. The humans worked with impossible speed and efficiency. When Confederation patrol ships tried to investigate, they found the humans unwilling to explain themselves. Requests for information were ignored. Demands to stop construction were refused. Chancellor Vex High decided that peaceful intervention was necessary. He took a diplomatic ship to one of the human construction sites, hoping to negotiate a solution. The system had been empty a week before. Now it contained dozens of human ships and a half-built space station. The structure was clearly military in purpose. Weapon platforms and defensive barriers were already in place. This is Chancellor Vex High of the Galactic Confederation, he transmitted. I request permission to come aboard for peaceful talks. Permission denied, came the reply. This is a restricted military zone. I am the elected representative of 800 billion citizens. You cannot simply refuse diplomatic contact. Watch us." That was the end of the conversation. When the Chancellor's ship tried to move closer, warning shots flashed past their hull. The message was clear: leave now or be destroyed. The Chancellor returned to the capital world of New Eden in shock. His report to the Council created panic. The humans were not interested in joining Confederation society. They were building weapons and claiming territory by force. The Council voted to send a fleet to one of the human positions. Not to attack, but to show that the Confederation would not be pushed around. 50 ships gathered under the command of Admiral Kent, a proud warrior from the hegemony worlds. The confrontation happened at a system the humans called Outpost 7. Admiral Kent brought his finest ships and most experienced crews. They outnumbered the human forces 3-1. "Human vessels, you are occupying Confederation space without permission," Admiral Kent announced. "Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The human response was swift and terrible. Human ships moved like nothing Admiral Kent had ever seen. They appeared and disappeared in flashes of light. Boarding pods launched before his weapons could even aim. In minutes, human soldiers were inside every Confederation ship, but something strange happened. Instead of killing, the humans captured. Instead of destroying, they disabled. Admiral Kent found himself facing a human soldier who moved with deadly grace but kept his weapon lowered. "Surrender and no one dies," the soldier said calmly. "Resist and we will stun you unconscious. Your choice." Within an hour, the entire Confederation fleet was captured without a single death. The human boarding teams moved through the ships like ghosts, disabling weapons and taking control of key systems. They worked with the efficiency of a military that had done this countless times. Admiral Kent sat in his own command chair, now a prisoner on his own ship. The human soldier who had captured him removed his helmet, revealing a young face marked by old scars. "How?" Admiral Kent asked. "How did you defeat us so easily?" The human soldier looked tired. "Because we have spent 10,000 years preparing for war, while you have spent 10,000 years forgetting what war means. We are a peaceful people. We have built something beautiful." "Yes," the soldier agreed. "And now we will die to protect it." The Confederation fleet was released the next day. The ships were returned undamaged and the crews unharmed. But the message was clear. The humans were here to stay, and they would fight anyone who tried to stop them. As Admiral Kent flew home, he wondered what kind of people would spend 10,000 years preparing for a war that might never come. What kind of sacrifice was that? What kind of dedication? Behind him, human construction continued without pause. Time was running out, and there was so much work to do. The first sign came from the edge of the galaxy. Deep Space Monitoring Station. Omega 7 had watched the same patch of empty space for 300 years. It was a quiet assignment. Nothing ever happened in the galactic rim. The station's crew of 12 aliens spent their time cataloging distant stars and monitoring cosmic radiation. Communications. Officer Zara was enjoying her morning meal when every alarm on the station began screaming at once. "What's happening?" shouted Commander Brix, rushing onto the bridge. Zara's six-fingered hands flew over her control panel. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy distortions in Sector 779. The patterns don't match anything in our database." "Show me." The main screen filled with data from their long-range sensors. Where 3 star systems had existed the day before, now there was only empty space. Not destroyed space. Not exploded space. Just nothing. "Run a full diagnostic," Commander Brix ordered. "The sensors must be malfunctioning." But the diagnostics came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. 3 entire star systems had simply vanished without a trace. Within hours, Similar reports came from monitoring stations across the rim. Dozens of star systems were disappearing. The rate of loss was increasing. Whatever was causing this was moving toward the center of the galaxy. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. Scientists created theories about stellar collapse, black hole formation, and natural disasters. None of their explanations made sense. Stars did not just disappear. Expedition fleets were sent to investigate. They found nothing. The ships would arrive at coordinates where planets had existed for millions of years and find only empty space. No debris, no radiation signatures, no evidence that anything had ever been there. The expeditions themselves began to disappear. Panic spread through Confederation space like wildfire. Citizens demanded answers that their leaders could not provide. Trade routes were abandoned. Entire species began fleeing toward the galactic center. On the human world of Earth, Admiral Chun stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Red zones marked the areas where star systems had vanished. The pattern was clear to anyone who knew what to look for. "They're following the same route as before," she told her assembled staff. 50,000 years ago, they came from the same direction and consumed everything in their path. "How can you be sure it's the same enemy?" asked Commander Jackson. "The consumption pattern, the rate of advance, the complete absence of debris." Admiral Chun highlighted sections of the display. "Our ancestors fought this enemy before the first galactic civilization fell. They called them the Devourers." General Martinez, a scarred veteran of the old wars, stepped forward. "Ma'am, if these Devourers destroyed the previous civilization, how did humans survive? We didn't fight them last time. We hid. When we realized the galaxy was doomed, our ancestors gathered what survivors they could and went underground. They waited 50,000 years for the Devourers to leave. Then they spent another 40,000 years building our civilization. And when the Devourers returned, Admiral Chun's face was grim. We made a choice. We could either enjoy 10,000 years of peace and die when they came back, or sacrifice those 10,000 years to prepare for their return. The weight of that sacrifice hung heavy in the air. Entire generations had given up their lives to sleep in stasis. They had missed 40 lifetimes of love, art, discovery, and joy. All so that they would be ready for this moment. What exactly are we facing? Asked Dr. Reeves, the chief scientist. Self-replicating machines. They consume matter and energy to build more of themselves. They've been traveling between galaxies for millions of years. When they finish with one galaxy, they move to the next. Why don't they just stay in one place? Because they consume everything. Stars, planets, space dust. They strip a galaxy down to nothing, then move on. They can't be reasoned with or stopped. They exist only to consume and replicate. Commander Jackson pulled up tactical data. Our models show they'll reach major Confederation worlds within 18 months. Central systems in 3 years. What about the Confederation military response? Asked General Martinez. Admiral Chun almost smiled. They don't have a military. They have some patrol ships and civilian defense forces, but nothing that could fight the Devourers. Their society forgot that some threats require violence to stop. Then the galaxy is defenseless. Not defenseless. They have us. On the Confederation capital world of New Eden, Chancellor Vexhai received reports that grew worse by the hour. Entire colonies had gone silent. Refugee ships filled every spaceport. His government was collapsing under the weight of mass panic. When Captain Morrison requested another meeting, the Chancellor accepted immediately. This time, Morrison brought detailed tactical displays and scientific data. He laid out everything the humans knew about the Devourer threat. The Chancellor listened in growing horror. "You're telling me that our entire civilization is about to be wiped out by machines?" "Yes, Unless we stopped them, how do we fight something like this? Morrison activated a holographic display showing human fleet positions. We've been building weapons and ships designed specifically to fight the Devourers. We have 40,000 vessels ready for combat, with more being built every day. Chancellor Vex High stared at the display. 40,000 warships? How is that possible? You've only been awake for 6 months. We've been preparing for 10,000 years. Every ship design, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine has been planned for this war. We built the factories while we slept. When we woke up, production began immediately. But 40,000 ships, that's more than the total number of vessels in Confederation space. It won't be enough. The simple statement hit the Chancellor like a physical blow. If 40,000 warships weren't enough, what hope did they have? What do you need from us? He asked quietly. Industrial capacity. We need every factory in Confederation space building weapons and ships. We need your fastest vessels converted to evacuation ships. We need your scientists working on defense systems. My people have sworn oaths of non-violence. Most of them have never even seen a weapon. Then they will learn quickly, or they will die slowly. Chancellor Vex High looked out the window at the peaceful city below. Citizens walked the streets without fear. Children played in parks. Couples held hands by fountains. It was beautiful and pure and utterly doomed. How long do we have? To evacuate the outer systems? 3 months. To prepare defenses for the core worlds? 80 months. To say goodbye to the people you love? Morrison's face was stone. You should do that now. That night, emergency broadcasts went out across all Confederation channels. For the first time in 10,000 years, citizens were told that war was coming. The government tried to maintain calm, but panic was inevitable. Riots broke out on some worlds. Others saw mass religious gatherings as species prayed to their gods for salvation. A few societies simply refused to believe the reports and continued their lives as normal. But on many worlds, something else happened. Species that had never known war began to remember older instincts. Factory workers stayed at their jobs and began building the machines of war. Civilian ship captains volunteered for evacuation duty. Young people signed up for military training they had never thought they would need. The galaxy was waking up. Not from 10,000 years of sleep, but from 10,000 years of dreaming that peace could last forever. In the deep places of Earth, Admiral Chun watched the reports and felt a mixture of hope and dread. The Confederation was finally taking the threat seriously. But would it be enough? Outside, in the cold space between the stars, sensors detected new distortions. The Devourers were accelerating. They had noticed the galaxy's activity and were moving faster. Time was running out. The Battle of Kepler's Gate began at 0347 hours. Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the human flagship Endurance, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for war. 50,000 ships filled the space around the massive stargate that connected the outer rim to the core systems. If the Devourers broke through here, nothing would stop them from reaching the heart of Confederation space. The human fleet formed the center of the battle line. 42,000 warships built for one purpose: to kill machines that ate stars. Their hulls were black metal designed to absorb energy. Their weapons fired concentrated antimatter that could crack planets. Around them, in a formation that would have been impossible 6 months ago, flew ships from every member species of the Confederation. They had worked day and night to convert cargo vessels into fighting ships. Passenger liners now carried missile launchers. Mining ships had been fitted with energy cannons. Even pleasure craft flew alongside warships, their crews determined to fight. "Enemy contact," reported Commander Jackson from the sensor station. "Range 2 million kilometers in closing. The Devourer swarm appeared on the main display like a cancer spreading across space. There were millions of them. Each machine was the size of a city, covered in silver metal that seemed to drink in light. They moved in perfect coordination, driven by a collective intelligence older than most stars. All ships, this is Admiral Chun, she transmitted to the fleet. Today we fight not just for humanity, but for every thinking being in this galaxy. For your families, for your children, for the right to exist in a universe where life has meaning. The Devourers opened fire first. Beams of pure energy lashed across space, destroying dozens of ships in seconds. The Confederation vessels, built for peace, began to break apart under the assault. But the human ships pressed forward. They moved through space like dancers, their pilots trained for exactly this moment. Antimatter torpedoes streaked toward the enemy swarm. When they hit, Devourer machines exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "Direct hit on enemy Formation 7, called out Commander Jackson. "We've destroyed 12 of their heavy units. But for every Devourer destroyed, 3 more took its place. The machines were building new units even as they fought. They consumed the wreckage of destroyed ships and turned the matter into new weapons. Captain Yara of the Altarian vessel Peaceseeker watched in horror as her sister ship exploded. She had never seen death before. The Confederation had eliminated war so completely that most citizens had never witnessed violence. "Captain, we're taking heavy damage," her weapons officer reported. "Our shields are failing." Yara looked at her crew. They were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. They had volunteered for this fight, knowing they would probably die. But they stayed at their posts. "All power to weapons," she ordered. "If we're going down, we're taking some of them with us." The Peaceseeker charged into the Devourer formation, firing everything it had. The ship was destroyed in moments, but not before its missiles found their targets. Across the battle line, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Confederation crews with no military training fought with desperate courage. They died by the thousands, but they kept fighting. Commander Zeth of the Crystalline Collective had never left his home world before this war. His people were peaceful philosophers who spent their lives contemplating the nature of existence. Now he found himself commanding a battle cruiser, watching his friends die. "Why are we here?" asked his navigator, a young crystal being named Cass. "We could have evacuated. We could have fled to the next galaxy." Commander Zeth watched a human destroyer sacrifice itself to save a damaged Confederation transport. The human ship ran directly into a Devourer machine, destroying both vessels. "Because someone has to stand," he said quietly. "Someone always has to stand between the darkness and the light." The battle raged for 6 hours. Admiral Chun watched her carefully planned formations dissolve into individual duels. Ships fall alone or in small groups, cut off from the main fleet. The Devourers adapted to human tactics faster than expected. "Admiral, we're losing," reported General Martinez. "The enemy is breaking through on our left flank. They'll reach the gate in 30 minutes. Chun studied the tactical display. The humans had fought as well as possible, but they were outnumbered 10 to 1. The careful plans of 10,000 years were falling apart. Then something unexpected happened. A message came through on all channels. It was from Captain Tor of the Hegemony Worlds, commanding a squadron of converted mining ships. "Human fleet, this is Captain Tor. My ships are moving to support your center formation. We may not know how to fight, but we know how to die for something that matters." More voices joined in. Captain Reng of the Void Runners, Commander Vel of the Agricultural Collective, dozens of Confederation captains, all declaring their intention to fight alongside the humans. Admiral Chun felt something she had not expected. Hope. All Confederation vessels. "This is Admiral Chun. Form up behind the human destroyers." We'll punch through their formation together. The combined fleet reorganized itself around the human ships. Where human vessels led, alien ships followed. The Confederation crews had no experience with space combat, but they had something else: absolute determination. The attack hit the Devourer swarm like a spear of light. Human weapons cleared the path while Confederation ships poured through the gaps. Species that had never worked together in battle moved as one force. Dr. Yenna of the Science Directorate was piloting a converted research vessel when she saw it happen. A human frigate was surrounded by Devourer machines, its shields failing. Without thinking, she pushed her unarmed ship between the enemy and the humans. "What are you doing?" shouted her co-pilot. "We have no weapons." "We have mass," Dr. Yenna replied, ramming her ship into a Devourer at full speed. The collision destroyed both vessels, but the human frigate escaped. Captain Williams of that ship watched the scientists sacrifice and felt his heart break. This was why humans had slept for 10,000 years. Not for glory or conquest, but to protect people like Dr. Yenna. The tide of battle began to turn. The Devourers, designed to fight individual species, struggled against the combined tactics of 50 different races. Each species brought unique advantages. The Void Runners knew how to navigate through enemy formations. The Crystalline Collective could predict enemy movements. Even the Agricultural Collective contributed, using their cargo ships to ram enemy vessels, but the cost was terrible. Half the fleet was gone. Millions of beings had died in a single day. Admiral Chun looked at the casualty reports and felt the weight of every life. "Admiral," called Commander Jackson, "the surviving Devourers are retreating. They're falling back to regroup." The bridge erupted in cheers, but Chun felt no joy. They had won one battle. The Devourers would return with more ships, better tactics, and no mercy. Chancellor Vex High's voice came through on the command channel. He was aboard a medical ship, helping with the wounded. "Admiral Chun, I owe you an apology. We didn't understand what you were trying to protect." "You understand now," Chun replied. "That's what matters. The Council has voted. We're placing all Confederation forces under your command. Whatever you need, whatever it costs, we'll do it. Why? 6 months ago, you wanted us to leave." There was a long pause. When the Chancellor spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Because we watched you fight today. We watched humans die to protect people you barely knew. We watched you stand between us and oblivion, asking for nothing in return." Admiral Chun closed her eyes. This was the moment she had been trained for. Not the battle, but this. The moment when other species understood what the rule really meant. "It's not about being human," she said quietly. "It's about being willing to stand guard so others can sleep safely. Any species can learn that. Any people can choose to be protectors instead of just survivors." Across the battlefield, human and alien ships worked together to rescue survivors. The same hands that had fired weapons now pulled wounded beings from damaged vessels. Former enemies worked side by side to save lives. Captain Morrison, the human who had first made contact with the Confederation, found himself working alongside Chancellor Vex High in a makeshift medical bay. They treated wounded without regard for species or origin. "Captain, I have to ask," the Chancellor said as they bandaged an injured Void Runner. "How did humans know? How did you know that sacrifice would inspire others to sacrifice?" Morrison looked around at the mixed crews working together. "We didn't know. We hoped. The rule isn't about humans being special. It's about someone being willing to go first, to show others that some things are worth dying for." Outside, in the cold space between the stars, sensors detected new Devourer formations massing for another attack. The war was far from over, but something had changed. The galaxy had remembered how to fight. More importantly, it had remembered why fighting sometimes mattered. The rule was no longer just human. It belonged to everyone willing to stand guard in the darkness. The final battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Admiral Chun stood in the command center of the rebuilt fleet, watching as human and Confederation ships worked together in perfect harmony. 6 months of desperate fighting had taught the galaxy's species how to fight as one. They moved like a single organism, each part supporting the others. The Devourer swarm was massive. They had consumed 12 star systems to build their final assault force. Over 10 million machine units filled space around the cool worlds, determined to finish what they had started. But the galaxy was ready. "Admiral, all fleets report ready," Commander Jackson announced. "The hegemony holds the left flank. Crystalline Collective takes the right. Void Runners are in position for deep strikes." Chun nodded. Each species had found their role in the fighting. The hegemony warriors fought like ancient berserkers. The Collective used their analytical minds to predict enemy movements. The Void Runners darted through enemy formations like ghosts. And holding the center, the human fleet stood ready to pay any price. "Begin the attack," Chun ordered. The combined fleet struck the Devourer swarm from 6 directions at once. Antimatter torpedoes lit up space like new stars. Energy beams carved through enemy formations. For the first time in the war, the galaxy fought with unified purpose. Captain Sarah Kim of the human destroyer Defiance led her squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. Behind her flew ships from a dozen species. They had learned to trust human leadership because humans had proven they would die before they would retreat. "Target the command nodes," Kim transmitted. "If we can disrupt their coordination, the whole swarm will fall apart." The mixed squadron drove deep into Devourer space. Enemy machines swarmed around them like angry insects. Ships began to fall, but the survivors pressed on. They had learned that some victories could only be won through sacrifice. Lieutenant Zara of the Agricultural Collective was piloting a converted cargo hauler when her ship took critical damage. Her engines were dead, her weapons offline, but she was still moving toward a Devourer command ship. "This is Lieutenant Zara," she transmitted calmly. "Tell my family I remembered what it means to stand guard." Her ship slammed into the enemy vessel at full speed. The explosion took out an entire section of the Devourer formation. Across the battlefield, similar acts of heroism played out. Dr. Vell of the Science Directorate used his research ship to ram an enemy carrier. Commander Thet of the Mining Guild sacrificed his entire squadron to create an opening for human fighters. They were not soldiers. They were teachers, farmers, scientists, and merchants. But they had learned the most important lesson, that civilization was not a gift, but a choice that every generation had to make. The Devourers began to falter. Their perfect coordination broke down as command nodes were destroyed. Individual machines started making errors. The swarm that had seemed unstoppable began to fragment. "Admiral, the enemy center is collapsing," reported General Martinez. "They're retreating to their main staging area. All ships, pursue and destroy," Chun ordered. "We end this now." The chase lasted for hours. Human ships, built for long-range combat, led the pursuit. Confederation vessels followed, their crews pushing damaged engines beyond safe limits. They would not let the Devourers escape to threaten another galaxy. The final Devourer stronghold was a massive structure they had built around a dying star. It was larger than most planets, covered in weapons and armor. Millions of machine units defended it. Admiral Chun looked at the tactical display and felt the weight of command. This would be the last battle, but it would cost everything they had left. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun. We've come this far together. Now we finish it together." The attack began at dawn, ship time. The combined fleet threw everything at the Devourer fortress. Ships that were barely holding together fired their last weapons. Crews that had been awake for 3 days straight kept fighting on pure determination. Captain Morrison, the human who had first made contact with the Confederation, led the final assault. His ship was dying around him, but he guided it toward the fortress core, where the Devour Central Intelligence was housed. "Captain, we have massive structural damage," his engineer reported. "The ship won't hold together much longer." Morrison looked around his bridge at the mixed crew that had served with him. Humans, Altarians, Void Runners, and others. They had become family in the crucible of war. "We don't need long," he said. "Just long enough." They punched through the fortress defenses in a blaze of antimatter fire. Other ships followed them, crews from across the galaxy united in one final push. They had learned that some things were worth any sacrifice. The fortress core exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from neighboring systems. The Devourer intelligence that had consumed 1,000 galaxies died in that moment. Across space, the remaining machines simply stopped moving. The war was over, but the cost had been terrible. Half the human fleet was gone. Hundreds of Confederation ships had been destroyed. Millions of beings who had lived in peace for 10,000 years had died learning how to fight. Admiral Chun sat in her command chair, looking at casualty reports that broke her heart. So many good people lost. So many futures cut short. The peaceful galaxy would never be the same. 6 months later, representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered on New Eden for the signing of the new compact. Chancellor Vex High, older now and marked by the weight of war, stood before the assembly. He looked out at faces that show both grief and determination. The galaxy had lost its innocence, but it had gained something more important: wisdom. "We gathered today not to celebrate victory, but to honor sacrifice," he began. "We've learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the willingness to fight for what matters." Admiral Chun stepped forward. She wore a simple black uniform, without decorations or symbols of rank. Half her hair had gone white during the war, and scars marked her hands from the last desperate battles. The humans who went to sleep 10,000 years ago did so believing that sacrifice had meaning, she said. They gave up their lives, their loves, their dreams so that others could live in peace. Today, species from across the galaxy have proven that they were right. The new compact was different from the old Confederation. It maintained the peaceful cooperation that had made the galaxy prosperous. But it also created the Defense Corps, a military force drawn from all species and dedicated to protecting the innocent. Some humans chose to return to sleep, maintaining the long watch for threats that might come from deep space. Others remained awake, teaching the galaxy's children how to be guardians as well as dreamers. Admiral Chun was among those who stayed. She established the Guardian Academy on a dozen worlds, where young beings of every species learned that true strength came from protecting others, not dominating them. Captain Morrison became the first commander of the integrated fleets, where human tactical knowledge combined with alien innovation. The ships that patrolled the galaxy were crewed by mixed species who had learned to trust each other in the fire of war. Dr. Yena's daughter, who had survived the war, became one of the first students at the Guardian Academy. She learned that her mother's sacrifice had not been meaningless, but part of something larger. The choice to stand guard so others could sleep safely. The rule spread beyond humanity. It became the foundation of galactic civilization. Not that humans were special, but that someone always had to be willing to stand first, to show others that some things were worth defending. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt, but it remembered. Children played in parks while Defense Corps ships watched the skies. Scientists made new discoveries while Guardian stations monitored deep space. Artists created beauty while warriors prepared for darkness. Peace returned, but it was different now. It was peace with eyes open, peace that understood its own cost. The galaxy slept soundly not because it had forgotten about danger, but because it knew someone was always watching. On Earth, in the deep places where millions still slept, Admiral Chen sometimes visited the memorial halls. Names covered the walls. Humans who had died in stasis, dreaming of a war they would never see. Confederation beings who had learned to fight and died, protecting strangers. She would stand before those names and make the same promise every time. We remember. We guard. We stand so others can dream. Outside, human and alien children played together under alien suns. They learned about the war in school, but they also learned about hope. They were told that darkness might come again, but they were also taught that light would always find a way to push it back. The galaxy was safe, for now. And somewhere in the deep places of space, sensors watched and waited. The long watch continued, as it always would, because someone had to stand guard. Someone always had to be willing to go first. That was the rule, and it belonged to everyone who chose to follow it.